The internet is well over 20 years old, and over that span of time we have seen it transform from a delivery system of just text to being the platform that today's modern applications run on. And it's a little funny that we've seen this huge amount of innovation that literally changed the way that we use the internet, but when it comes to email, which is just as old, has remained mostly unchanged. Now, yes, there have been improvements to increase security, such as SSL, SPF, and domain keys, but there are still some issues that we continue to have to deal with today. Like, for example, it is incredibly prone to failure. Now, a lot of those failures are due to human error, but that's just part of the issue. A simple typo, just one character off, will cause an email to not be delivered. We also have to deal with invalid addresses. And email addresses are also very easily obtainable. Now, yes, that's great. Everybody should have an email address, but it is so easy that bad actors can easily obtain an email address for spoofing and spam. Now, every application that works with email, which is just about every web application because email is the primary means that we interact with our customers. Every application needs some tools to help work with these issues. And mailboxlayer has the tools you need to separate low-quality email addresses from real users. Now, mailboxlayer is a powerful, RESTful API that offers instant email address validation and verification, and it does so with a variety of checks, such as syntax errors. It will also check for typos or spelling mistakes. It will also check the MX DNS records and the SMTP server. I mean, there's a lot of things that you can do to validate and verify an email address, and mailboxlayer does it. And you can trust mailboxlayer because it is trusted by the smartest companies like Intel, Zillow, Bitwage. These are all large companies that rely upon mailboxlayer to validate and verify their email addresses. And mailboxlayer is built by API Layer. Now, if you're not familiar with API Layer, just go to apilayer.com and you will see all of the APIs that they've built. That's what their products are. They build APIs, and they have an infrastructure that is highly available and highly scalable, so that whenever you need to use mailboxlayer, it is going to be available, it's going to be fast, and it is going to be reliable. Let's hop on over to the documentation, because this is going to give us an idea of what mailboxlayer actually provides as far as validation tools. Just scroll on down to the API validation tools section, and you will see all of the endpoints that are provided. So there's a syntax check. That is a separate endpoint from the typo check or the real-time verification. You can see all of these things here. The syntax check is very simple. It basically just determines whether or not the email address follows the rules. Does it have a local part followed by an @ and then a domain? And then are the characters how they are supposed to be? Are there any invalid characters? You know, just basic simple checks. Now, the thing that really piques my interest is this real-time verification, because this is going to go much further. It's going to check for MX records. Now, if you're not familiar with DNS and what MX records are, the MX records basically tell the rest of the world that there is a mail server, or there's something that is going to handle the email for a particular domain. So if a user provides an email address with a domain that doesn't exist or doesn't have MX records, then, well, it's not a valid email address. But if there are MX records, it's going to go a step further. It's going to actually check the SMTP server. In this right here, the resulting SMTP conversation represents the key factor that ultimately lets us know whether or not the email address provided actually exists. That's pretty awesome. Now, one thing about the documentation is that they show you which endpoints are available for which subscription plans. So the real-time verification, which is definitely something that I would want to use all of the time, it's available with the free plan, as well as the basic, the pro, and the enterprise. So let's play around with this API. We of course need to sign up for a free account, so let's go ahead and do that. This is going to give us an opportunity to look at the subscription plans. So there are four. There's the free plan, the basic plan, the professional plus, and the enterprise plus. And of course, they range from free to $250 a month. Now, of course, the more you pay, the more you are going to get. But the free plan is very generous. You get 250 API requests for a month. You get the syntax and typo checks. You get the free and disposable checks. You get the quality score as well as the real-time check. And that's fantastic. However, if this is a service that you are going to be using for one or multiple applications, then you will of course want to pay for a subscription. Like the basic plan offers everything that the free plan does, but you also get SSL, you get the catch-all detection, and if you pay even more, then you can start making bulk requests. So instead of needing to verify multiple email addresses but sending individual requests, you can send one request with up to 25 emails, or if you go for the enterprise plan, 100 emails, which is of course going to save you the amount of API requests that you would need to make. So regardless of what your needs, there is a plan that is for you. Now we are going to go for the free plan. And you just need to fill out all of the information. And after you sign in, you will be greeted with the dashboard in your control panel. This is where you will get your API key. You will need that for every request that you make. And then there's a nice little utility to make a little test request. It's going to default to whatever email address you registered with. So just click on run. And this is actually going to do the SMTP check. And of course, thankfully, mine passes muster, so we are good to go. But this also gives us a URL that we can just get up and running very quickly. So we're going to use that in our code, and we're going to use JavaScript because it's very easy to get started with. We want to make a directory. We'll just call it mailboxlayer, and we of course want to cd into that directory. And once we do, then we are going to run npm init-y. This is going to initialize our project, taking all the defaults for the questions that we would normally have to answer. And we're also going to install a package called light server. And we want to save this as a dev dependency. Now, this is a lightweight HTTP server, and the reason why we need an HTTP server is because we are going to be making an HTTP request. And in order to make an HTTP request, we have to run our code from an HTTP server. So that's why we will have light server. But once that is done installing, then we can just fire up our code editor and we can start writing our code. Although the first thing we want to do is go to package.json, and we're going to add an item to the scripts here. So let's call this item server, and the value is going to simply be light server. There's other options that we could specify, but we're just going to take the defaults, and that's going to be good enough. Now let's create a new file at the root of our project. We'll call this index.html, and let's just add some boilerplate HTML. We don't really need anything other than some JavaScript. So let's have a script element. And if we take a look at the documentation, there are examples for PHP and JavaScript, and the JavaScript uses jQuery, I believe. And we could use jQuery if we wanted to, but every modern browser has the Fetch API. So let's just use the Fetch API. And this gives us, a reasonable example of code that we could use. But let's write our own. So let's go back to our code editor, and we are going to, first of all, call fetch. Now, fetch is very easy to use. If you haven't used it, then well, this is going to show you how. It's very simple. You simply call fetch, you pass in the URL that you want to make a request to, and then you're good to go. Now, this is asynchronous, however, so this means that we need to work with the promise that is given back to us by calling fetch. And this is going to work with the actual response. So since the response is in JSON format, we want to convert that into a JavaScript object. So the first thing that we are going to do is take that response and then convert it to an object by calling the JSON method. And then that is going to allow us to then work with that data, in which case we'll just write it out to the console. And that's a rather long line of code. So let's break this up into multiple lines so that we will have the call to fetch. Then we will convert the response to an object and then work with that data. So that is our code. Let's see this in action. We want to start up Light Server. So make sure that the file is saved. Let's go back to the command line. We'll say npm init serve, not init. We want to npm run serve. That is going to run that serve script that we added to package.json. And we are missing something. Did I not save package.json? Call that server. Well, we can leave that as server. That's fine. We'll go back, we'll run server, and this is going to run Light Server. It's going to automatically open up the page in the browser. Of course, there's nothing on the screen because we added no other markup, but we do have some JavaScript, and that was new. Open up DevTools. Okay. So if we look at the console, we have this object and we have the results. And if we wanted to compare this with the JSON response that we got back from the server, we're going to see that they are the same thing. Catch all false. Did you mean? That is the check for spelling or typos. We can see that this is not a disposable email address, that the domain is gmail.com. The format is valid. It is a free account. The MX checked out. This is not a role-based email like accounting or IT or something like that. And the SMTP check was true as well. So there we go. That's great. But we can clean this up a little bit. So let's go back to our code. And instead of just having our URL all just spelled out here, let's do this. We are going to create a variable called params. This is going to be all of our query parameters. And we have this type called URL search params. This gives us a very easy to work with API for creating basically the query parameters that we would want to include with a URL. So we have several things here. We need the access key. So that is going to be our access key. So we can just copy that from the existing URL. Let's cut that out and we will put that in the object that we are creating, the URL search params. But there's other things here. There's an email query item. So we will have that. That was set to my email address. It will, of course, be yours. And then there was also something else. If we take a look, there was this SMTP. So we will set that to the value of 1. And then the format, we're going to just leave off. The format is for formatting the JSON structure. If it is set to 1, then it is supposed to prettify the JSON structure so that it makes it a little easier to debug. We don't really need that in our case. So we will leave the format off, but we are going to include the params here. But of course, we need to change our type of string here. We're going to use the string interpolation feature so that we will have our URL, or at least the base URL, followed by the params. Then we will still work with the response, converting that into an object, and then we will have our data. So we can save that. We can go back to the browser. Let's refresh, even though it refreshed on its own, because that's one of the nice things about Light Server is when you save a file, it's going to automatically refresh the page. We can see once again, we have our object here. But let's do this. Let's say that we want to make an HTTPS request because we like to be secure. So let's save that. Let's go back to the browser. Now, our plan is a free plan. It does not support HTTPS. However, we still get a JSON response. So even in the case of an error, we get JSON, which is nice. So we don't have to guess what type of response we're going to get back. It's going to be in JSON format, which simplifies our code. But then this gives us all of the information about the error. So in our code, we could check to see if we got an error. And if so, then we can just see what that error was. And so there you go, that is how you can use the Mailbox Layer API. Email is the primary way that you communicate with your users, and it makes perfect sense that you would want to validate and verify your users' email addresses. Not only does it help fight fraud, but validation and verification can help reduce bounce rates for your email campaigns. And Mailbox Layer has the tools that you need to do just that. It's an easy-to-use RESTful API, and it is very easy to get started, so go ahead and register a new account today.